I wanted to be an actress when I was young, so I had some resentment over that.
This is very common for parents who always wanted to perform and be famous, so they thereby want fame for their children to live vicariously through them. In psychology, this is what's called parental projection, where they subconsciously put their own unfulfilled ambitions onto their children. Many parents innocently can't help but to do this. If you can, ask your parents what they always wanted to be but never became, such as an athlete, doctor, lawyer, singer, dancer, and you may find that you spent your childhood or even your adulthood chasing after your parents' dreams.
We as parents were not allowed back on the set. We were greeted by a production assistant, Jason Handy, who guided all the kids to where they need to be. Jason wants to email. I thought, oh, this is going well. I was so happy I was the parent that could give my child what she wanted in life.
In psychosocial dynamics with familial relationships, it's not uncommon for parents to unwittingly project their own desires and aspirations onto their children. And over time, this projection can become so ingrained that the child actually internalizes these desires as their own due to parental influence and the persistent development of a child's self-perception and aspirations. In other words, the child thinks it was their dream, but in reality, it was their parents' dream all along.
A couple months later, she was sitting at the computer and got up and ran into her bedroom. She said, I got an email from Jason. It was a picture of him
while also in the photo doing a lewd act. You may be asking, how is she not suspicious that something like this would happen? Yes, you guessed it, we can answer this through psychology. Trusting of authority figures, trusting the brand image and reputation of Nickelodeon, cognitive dissonance, optimism bias, and the endowment effect, where because she was excited that she felt that she was giving her daughter something wonderful,
I was the parent that could give my child what she wanted in life.
She inherently became less critical of the negative possibilities associated with that gift.
I went back and forth with, should I call the police?
Yes, she should. But why do you think it's so important to call the police if something like that happens?
They're going to think I'm a bad parent. All I can do is make sure I keep her far away from him.
Not reporting that is a really bad idea. But why? Right, something physical could have been done to her daughter and she could have also prevented it from happening to other children. Also, as much as a parent may not want to know what happened to their child, they need to know what happened so they can best get them psychological and medical care. I call this the ostrich effect of a parent sticking their head in the sand to ignore a negative issue. This is where parents superficially tend to ignore or avoid negative or threatening information pertaining to their children because it causes too much pain, fear, and anxiety, so they just pretend it doesn't exist. It's a pretty hilarious concept that the ostrich is such a huge bird but thinks it's doing a good job at hiding as long as it can't see. But that's the whole idea of this concept. Just because you superficially ignore the danger doesn't mean that the danger has magically become non-existent.
The public still has this image of Hollywood, of this glitz and glam, and they don't know what these kids went through.
Guess what percentage of Hollywood had something like that in general happen to them? 30%? 50%? 75%? No, 94%! And as we will discuss soon, it's also sadly passed down in a cycle from one generation of Hollywood to the next generation, so it will effectively sadly continue in Hollywood forever.
We'd like to speak with Brandy about Jason Handy. Are you familiar with that name?
Over 10,000 images of children.
We found a Ziploc bag and there were letters from her.
And of course her child wasn't the only one who he did that to. Whenever something like that happens, it's critical to promptly seek therapy from a trained professional to help address and mitigate the profound psychological impact those crimes have on the victim.
4 months later, another member of the crew was arrested.
Wait, 2? What is that? What is that?
When bank robber Willie Sutton was once asked by police, why did you only rob banks? Do you know what he said with a confused look on his face? Because that's where the money is. And in Hollywood, why would that type of person work on a kid's show? Yeah, you get the idea. But of course, not every adult who works on a kid's show was like that. However, that type of criminal would gravitate towards those shows. There's a saying that I often think of when I go through these cases. Bad people ruin good things for good people.
Pickle Boy likes to hurt and tease Pickles.
We were there for so many hours. You get comfortable with people.
In psychology, what she's describing is normalization of deviance. This occurs when people become accustomed to deviations from standard practices or norms over time, to the point where they no longer perceive these deviations as problematic or abnormal. This can happen gradually as people become desensitized to red flags due to repeated exposure or familiarity with a situation or individual.
A painting in the room of a birthday clown holding balloons. Brian got very excited when I asked him about it. To Brian, I hope you enjoy the painting. Best wishes, your friend, John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah, the dialogue coach on the kids' TV show All That was friends with the serial killer John Wayne Gacy, who killed 33 young men and buried them under his house.
Brian actually developed a pen pal relationship with John. He kept this pile of letters and photos from John Wayne Gacy in his nightstand next to his bed. Your instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt if you've known them for that long, even in the face of this really bad sign.
Yes, he seems to be referring to what's called cognitive dissonance, where the discomfort of having conflicting beliefs about a person causes them to reduce this discomfort by modifying their beliefs to align and rationalize the discrepancy. Given their positive feelings towards Brian stemming from their shared experiences working on the show, they were motivated to minimize and rationalize the significance of these warning signs in order to maintain their existing positive belief in Brian's character. This psychological phenomenon is akin to how outsiders may more readily identify red flags in your romantic partner, as they lack the emotional investment that clouds judgment, allowing them to perceive warning signs more objectively.
This man, who is like trusted as basically a supervisor of kids, is not safe.
That former child actor touches on another interesting concept, which is called deference to authority, where people are more likely to trust authority, a known brand, and assumed systems and processes. Many trusted the hiring process and assumed Nickelodeon was doing the proper background checks to prevent someone like Brian from working with children. This trust in the system led to a false sense of security and a lack of suspicion of Brian. Also, keep in mind, this was not a backyard company. This was Nickelodeon. And many assumed that they wouldn't hire someone who was dangerous to children to work with children.